Um, Good evening, interns, and welcome to our first 2025 intern workshop. My name is Thabang Serolela. I'm the manager in the CPD and registrations unit. We are happy to have you here with us tonight, and please stay with us until the end of this workshop. There is a lot of information that we're going to share with you, which will come in handy as you are busy with your pre-registration evaluation. There is some notes that are provided on the screen. Please take note of them because that is what is going to guide us throughout the workshop. So all your questions, you may post them on chat and they will be attended to towards the end of the workshop. And the workshop is going to take 3 hours. There will be a 10 minutes break in between. So please stay with us until the end of the workshop. And towards the end of the workshop, you will also be requested to complete a survey. Please do so because that will also be used as a proof of attendance. And lastly, the workshop presentation slides will be available on our website after the second workshop, which is going to take place on the 20th of February 2025. And thank you so much. We are now going into our first presentation. Okay, thank you. I hope you can all see my slides. All right, so as our introduction, we just want to congratulate you for making it. We know it has been a difficult time at the university, and we are so excited to have you as our 2025 interns. And we are here to help you navigate through this period of internship. So this is our program for tonight. We are going, I've done the welcome already, and then I'll be doing the introduction. And then from there, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues who are also assessors and moderators. We are having Professor Nelaveni Padayachi, Ms. Adele Nodi, and Mr. Makado Mulatese. So they are the ones who will be taking you through the second part of the workshop. And then our break, we envisaging to have it between 1940 and 1950. And then from there, we will continue with the presentations until 2040, when we will start taking the questions. Then from there, we will be closing at 21 hours. So this is the outline for our workshop. We will look at the legal framework, the pre-registration evaluation, and then we will also navigate the SAPC website. We will focus more on the intern page, and more attention will be given to the CPD page. And then from there, we will also look at some of the reasons that delay release from internship. We'll also look at the procedures that needs to be followed for reassessment, or when you want to have a consultation with an assessor. And then we will also look at some of the unprofessional conducts that are not allowed. And then we will also give you a brief statistics of the performance of the 2023 and 2024 interns in terms of the portfolio of evidence. And then again, we will also touch on community service, what is required of you. Lastly, we will share the contact details for counsel in case you want to contact us for any reason that is related to internship. And then, so we're looking at the legal framework for pre-registration. So here, interns are, I think you should be aware of this first part because you are now registered as interns. So all we're saying here is that there are requirements for you to be registered as an intern, which includes you having being placed in an approved premises and having a contract with an approved tutor, and also paying the prescribed fee. So those requirements, once they are met, then we will be able to register you as a pharmacist intern. So the internship program is for 12 months, and this is the period wherein you will be working under direct supervision of a pharmacist, so that you can have that opportunity of putting the knowledge that you have acquired over the 4 years of study into practice. And then, so when you're practicing as an intern, you will be doing the scope of practice of a pharmacist. The only difference here is that you will be working under direct supervision or a supervision of a pharmacist. And because we interns practice in different sectors, those who are in manufacturing and academia, they are required to complete 400 hours of supervised practice in an approved community or hospital pharmacy or an institutional pharmacy. And even when you are busy with your 400 hours of supervised practice, away from your normal place of practice, your tutor is still responsible for your training as an intern. And please make sure that when you go for the 400 hours of supervised practice, you make arrangements on time, and that should be through your tutor because she's the one who will be responsible for you even when you are away. And then it is also important to note that while you are doing your 400 hours, you must have periods of at least 5 days consecutively in your place where you are being supervised, and you must always keep records of what you have been doing there, because that can also assist you when you're compiling your CPD. And lastly, the submission of the progress report should be done by the supervising pharmacist while you are there, and that should be done online. Okay, now there is also what we call session of contract. So during your internship contract, you are allowed to terminate your contract with your tutor, and that may be terminated on mutual agreement. And for you to be able to enter into a contract with a new tutor, you need also to inform the office so that we can update our records. And also there is a procedure that must be followed. So what you need to do is to submit an online application for session of contract, and then you must also provide a contract with a new approved tutor, and also make a payment of the prescribed fee. So once you have provided all those documents, the office will be able to update your records and to seize your internship to the new tutor, and then council will need at least 7 days to complete that. So make sure that you submit at least 7 days prior to the date of session. And remember, it can only be approved if the requirements that I've mentioned are met. And then, okay, now we're entering into the pre-registration evaluation. So during these 12 months of internship, there are 4 components which you are expected to comply with, or to meet all the requirements of these 4 components. So the first one is what we call pre-registration examination. So you will be expected to sit for a pre-registration examination, which is written online. And then you are also expected to submit a portfolio of evidence on the online via the CPD system. And you will also be expected to submit progress reports. Those ones are to be submitted by your tutor, and they are also submitted online. Lastly, you are also expected to complete 365 days of practical training. And remember, this is done under the supervision of your tutor. So with the online examination, the pre-registration examination, it is important for you to note that it is an open book examination, and there will be 120 questions that you will be expected to answer. Each has a mark allocation of 1, and then the exam, it's one exam, but it is divided into 2 parts. So there will be the general practice, which accounts for 70%, and the calculations accounts for 30%. So what is happening is, for you to be successful on the pre-registration examination, you are expected to obtain at least 50% from the general questions and 60% from the calculation section. And then with the portfolio of evidence, you are expected to submit 6 portfolio of evidence entries, and each of this entry will be, these 6 entries are supposed to be from the 6 domains. So you're going to select one competency standard from each of the 6 domains. And please note that for domain number 5, competency standard 5.3 is compulsory. So in case of domain 5, you are not going to select. All of you are expected to do competency standard 5.3. So you should note that there is a schedule that we will be following throughout the year, wherein there are dates on which you are expected to submit the CPD entries, and also the dates on which you should expect the results. So that schedule is also provided in your manual. Just make sure that you familiarize yourself with it so that you can plan your year according to the schedule. And then with regards to the what do we call this? The progress reports. So the number of progress reports will differ depending on the sector or the category of pharmacy where you are practicing. For example, pharmacist interns who are in institutional or community will be expected to submit 7 progress reports, while those in manufacturing will be expected to submit 9, academia 3, and for the interns in academia, they are also expected to submit their master's qualification on completion so that they can be progressed or released from internship. And in addition to that, they need also to do the 400 hours of declaration, just like those in manufacturing. And then let's move on to the portfolio of evidence submission deadlines. So these are the deadlines which are provided on page 33 of your intern and tutor manual. I just want to explain the different color coding so that when you look at them, they make sense in the manual. So what's happening is where you're seeing the first column is showing the date on which you are expected to submit your entries for assessment. So any entry that is submitted after this date will be assessed with the next cycle. For example, entries were submitted on the 29th of June this month, the previous month of January. And then tutors were expected to verify them by the 31st of January. And then from there, they submit them for assessment. And we're going to release the results on the 14th of February. So next week, Friday. So that's how it works. So you must know the date on which you must submit for verification, and the tutor, after verifying, will submit for assessment. Please note that sometimes the tutor may want you to correct some of the things before they can submit your entry for assessment. So my advice is that don't submit your entry for verification on the last date of submission, because when the tutor maybe is not happy with your work, he has to return it back to you, and unfortunately you're going to miss that deadline. So make sure that you have your own deadlines in order to allow time for the tutor to return your entry for corrections in case there are corrections that you need to do. And then where there is a color that is gold-like, orange sort of, that color shows that after that submission deadline, or let me say this color, if you can see it, is just before the examination dates. So this means that interns who are going to receive their results on the 14th of February 2025, they will have an opportunity to book for the pre-registration examination that is taking place on the 4th and the 5th of March 2025, but they will have to pay the late booking fee because this is outside the normal booking dates. So just make sure that you check the booking dates and try to make sure that you get yourself ready to avoid paying the late booking penalties. So the same thing applies with the August pre-registration examination. Interns who are going to submit by the submission deadline of the 1st of July 2025, and in case they meet the requirements to sit for the pre-registration examination, unfortunately they will have to pay for the late booking. The same thing applies to those who will be submitting by the 1st of September 2025. And then, so make sure that you plan accordingly. And then the last thing that I want to highlight while we are still on the submission deadline is that interns must note that on submission of the 10th and subsequent portfolio of evidence entry for assessment, you will have to pay a fee of 316. So this means that for the first 9 attempts, you are submitting for free, but once you have exhausted them, then from the 10th submission, you will be expected to pay. So the system will not refuse you from submitting, but our department, our finance department will send you an invoice to pay at a later stage. And then these are the workshop dates. So what is happening is after these workshops that we are conducting during the month of February and March, we are going to have what we call the feedback workshops, just to share with you the feedback from assessors and moderators regarding the portfolio of evidence that you would have submitted. So those workshops are going to take place in June and July, and we're encouraging you to attend, especially those that might be struggling in passing the portfolio of evidence. So this is the session wherein the assessors and moderators will be guiding you on what needs to be done in order to be successful in your portfolio of evidence. So the examination dates are provided. I'm not going to dwell much on them because they are also available in your intern and tutor manual. What I want to highlight here is that all exam bookings must be done online before the closing date, and late booking fee will be charged after the closing date. So that is what I have just indicated. So make sure that you check for the booking dates and you book on time. And then the other thing that is also important is that for you to be admitted into the pre-registration examination, you should have written the practice examination. So we already had the first one on the 28th of January, and we're still going to have another one on the 3rd of June, and the last one on the 9th of September. So make sure that you participate in one of the three in order for you to be admitted into the examination. So you do the practice exam first, then you can sit for the pre-reg exam. And then the examination entrance requirements. So these requirements are also provided in your manual. You will see them as you go through the manual. But what is important for you to note is that interns who are on their 6 month of internship, they may book for the examination, the pre-reg examination, but there are requirements that they need to meet. So what is required of them is that they should have submitted at least 6 portfolio of evidence entries and be successful in at least 3. And then they must also have completed the practice exam. That's what I've just mentioned. And the tutor should have submitted the required progress reports. And then in case of those who are in their 9th month, the requirements are different from the ones that I've just mentioned, because here you are expected to be successful in all the 6 portfolio of evidence entries, and then you should have completed the practice examination and submitted 4 progress reports. And then those who are reattempting the pre-reg examination, they are also required to be successful in all 6 portfolio of evidence entries, and then they should have also submitted the required progress reports. So for the pre-registration examination, please note that the first and the second attempts are free. And then with the 3rd attempt and the subsequent attempts, you will be required to pay a fee of 2,703 rands. So all the information is provided in your manual, and you can also access the fees on our website. And then please note that the tutors will have access to your overall results. So don't be surprised. That's how it works with the pre-registration evaluation. And then now we are done with the pre-registration requirements. We are now moving on to the SAPC website. So this is the page wherein you can, that's the landing page when you are opening our website. And then as an intern, you will then go to the intern page. And once you are there, you will be able to access whatever information that is you whatever page that you need. But before we go into the secure site, this is the site that you access without putting in your login details. So you just select the registered person there, and then from there you will select the pharmacist intern role. That's where you are in, and then the arrow there shows wherein you can access the manual, the big arrow there next to where it's written pharmacist intern. And then there is also a link in case you want to download the manual, where you can be able to download the manual. And then when you want to log in, you're going to click there where it is written log in, then you will be able to access your secure site. And then we also have in the Intern CPD user manual, which you can click to download. It will help you as well for you to know how to submit CPD or it will assist you in navigating the CPD system. Okay, and then now let's get into the secure site. When you are on the secure site, you will be able to see the menu on the left there, wherein if you want to do your CPD, you will select CPD and it will take you straight to the CPD page. So this is the page that you will be working on when you're doing your portfolio of evidence. But before you can start working on this page, the system will request you to do your annual declaration. So just go to annual declaration, just click in there and start doing your annual declaration. So when you're doing your annual declaration, this is the page that you will see. And then when you are on this page, there are 3 sections that you are expected to complete. The first one is on employment. You will be required to put your employment details here. And then secondly is the domain competencies, wherein you will be indicating the domains and which are applicable to your practice. And then from there is the assessment criteria. So when you are done completing the 3 sections, then the system will tell you that you are done completing the annual declaration, and it will tell you that you are practicing. If you agree, you will click the agree button. If you don't agree, you will disagree, and it will take you back to the annual declaration for you to declare yourself again until you get in the status that is relevant to you. But for interns, I think we are all expecting you to be practicing. Otherwise, it means you are not an intern then. Only pharmacists can have a non-practicing status. And then once you are done with your annual declaration, this is what you will see. So in your case, you will only have the year 2025 because it's for the first time you do the annual declaration. And then it will show that you have completed it, that yes, should appear. This shows that you have completed your annual declaration. And then from there, you will be able to reach this CPD platform. And this is where you will be doing the submission of your portfolio of entry. So on this page, under my submission, you will be able to see all the CPDs that you have submitted. And then the CPD cycle will allow you to see the first step of a CPD cycle. And also it will provide an explanation of each step. And then the domains and competencies will allow you to see all the 6 domains that you will be using, as well as the competencies and the behavioral statement, which you will be expected to satisfy for each of the competencies you're going to choose. And then for you, the purpose of Intern, the archive is not really working because that's where the old CPDs are being stored. So in your case, don't worry about the archive. You will start using it maybe next year. And then from this page, so this is what you will see under CPD submission. And then for now, it will be empty because you haven't submitted anything. And then under the CPD cycle, when we click on that tab, this is what you will see. And then when you go to the domain and competency, you will see the 6 domains. And when you click on any of those domains, then it will give you a brief explanation of what the domain is all about. And then you will also be able to see the competencies and the behavioral statement for each of the competencies. And then so it's important for you to note that there are changes made on the submission of the portfolio of evidence. These changes, we are implementing them this year. So what is happening is we have included the plagiarism detection system on our portfolio of evidence submission process. So meaning interns from now onwards, what all the portfolio of evidence entries that you are submitting, they will be subjected to a plagiarism detection, wherein the similarity report will be made available for you to see. So the plagiarism detection is just there to assist you to see, also to assist the office to see if the work that you are submitting is your own, and also to rule out the possibility of copying. So this is the process that is going to be followed. It's there in your manual. I'm not going to take you through this process, but I will be showing the slides of what you will be seeing when you're submitting your CPDs. And I think that will help you to know what to do. What is important for you to note is that the maximum acceptable similarity score is 20%. So anything above 20% is high, and it will be up to the intent whether you want to relook at your work and try to reduce the score, or you submit it as is. So now let's look at the POE submission process. So when you have done your work and you are ready to start with the submission of the POE entries, you are going to go on to the reflection, which is the first step of the cycle. And then here you're going to complete all these questions that are there. You just click the down arrow and select the option that is relevant for you. And then at the bottom, you'll be expected to provide a brief description of your learning need. So please note that you are expected to provide up to 1,000 characters, and then you'll be able to save and move on to the next step, which is planning. But if you before you can go to planning, the system will ask you, do you want to move on, or you want to save and continue at a later stage? So you will take the option that suits you well best. And then if you continuing, then you'll go to the planning phase, and then the same thing will apply. You will also be expected to provide a brief description there, and you save. And then if you want to continue, then you will select the yes option, which will take you to the implementation phase, wherein you will also be able to give a brief description of your implementation. What is it that you have done? And then from there, once you are done and you press save, the system will then ask you to upload your evidence. So the evidence is uploaded during the implementation phase, and then you will be able to choose the file and upload. And then after uploading, then you are still able, I mean, the system will allow you to view the document that you have uploaded just to make sure that you have uploaded the correct one. And then in case it's not the correct one, you'll be able to remove it and upload again. In case it's correct, then you can move on to the next step, which is evaluation. So when you are at the evaluation step, you will also be expected to provide a brief description of what you have learned. And when you are done, so this is where the change is, because previously, after the evaluation step, interns were submitting their portfolio of evidence for tutor to verify, but now it will ask you to submit for similarity check. And then once you have, I mean, there's no way it can go to the tutor without first being submitted for similarity check. And then for similarity check, there is you need to accept the EULA. Then once that you have accepted that, you will be able to submit. So the red there, the highlighted area there, that's where it will ask you, do you agree with all those conditions? If you are fine, you'll say, yes, I agree, and then you submit. And then once that has been done, then it will take you to a screen that is similar to this one, wherein then you will submit for similarity check. And then after submitting, the system will confirm that your submission was successful, and then you will see this part saying waiting for report generation. So immediately after you have submitted, the system will start assessing your entry and checking similarities. And then when after that is done, then you will be able to view your report, your similarity report. So you will click here where it says view the report. So when and I'm sorry, under normal circumstances, it doesn't really take too long. So you can give it at least a day or even less than a day, but a maximum of a day. If you don't get anything after a day, is then that you can submit your query to the office. So then you'll be able to view the report. But in case the report is not there, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. So for you to view the report, you'll click on the view report tab, and then it will open the next page wherein it will allow you to open a PDF report, meaning you will be able to see the summary report, but once you click open the PDF report, you will be able to see the full report. And then if the report is not yet there, please come and click here under my submission, and then from there go to this tab which is saying similarity check report. Click on it, and then we're expecting you to be able to get your report within a day or so. And then so once the report is there, you will be able to see your score. For example, the example that I'm having here, it has got a similarity score of 2%. So in this case, it means you are good to go. You can then go back to the evaluation step and submit your CPD entry for tutor verification. But in case you want to in case your similarity score maybe is above 20% and you want to rework on your entry, you still go back to the 4 steps of CPD. You will be able to, I mean, the report will guide you the areas which you need to focus on. And then like under reflection, it will highlight in blue those areas that are similar to the work that has been submitted before by other interns. So in that case, you go back to that step and correct whatever needs to be corrected. And so once that is done, then you will be able, I mean, when you are happy with your work, you can then submit for the tutor to verify, and the tutor will submit the entry for assessment in case they are happy with what you have submitted. And then the entry will be assessed and the results will be released according to the date that have been provided. So here what's happening is that when the results are available and you go onto your secured site, this is what you will see. The status of the entry will be saying submitted for compliance. Please click on the submitted for compliance for you to view your assessment status or the results. Under assessment status, it will show successful if you have passed, and then there will also be a report which you will be able to evaluate. So here is that, I mean, what I want you to take note of is that in case of a successful POE entry, the status will remain the same. It will keep, it will be submitted for compliance. There won't be any change. But in case you are unsuccessful, so immediately when you click that submitted for compliance, the status will change to awaiting submission. So this means that you are not successful. You need to rework on your entry and resubmit it. So when you check on the assessment status, it will also say not yet successful. And then in this case, you will get your report just like with the successful entry. Please, whether you are successful or unsuccessful, make sure that you open the report and read the assessor's comments. In case you are successful, those comments can help you to correct some of the mistakes that you have made with, when you're doing your other CPD entries that are still outstanding. And then in case of the unsuccessful entry, the comments will help you to work on your entry and resubmit. And here I also want to ask you to download the report immediately and save it, because once you start doing your corrections, sometimes the reports disappear and that can delay you, because for us to get it back, we still need to involve IT, and sometimes it takes a number of days. So make sure that you download the report so that it is readily available whenever you want to refer. So when you are done, what you will click reflection and it will allow you to access all the 4 steps. And then when you are done with your work, then you can submit for tutor verification. And here are some of the reasons that contribute to the release from internship. So interns are encouraged to make sure that they meet all the requirements of the 4 components of pre-registration evaluation in order to make sure that they don't find themselves not being released at the end of the year. And then with regard to the portfolio of evidence, please make sure that, or you should note that entries that are going to be submitted after the 28th of November, they will be evaluated in the following year. So that will also contribute to you being released from internship. So make sure that you start submitting as soon as possible. And then these are some of the disappointments that the previous interns experience, and unfortunately from the office we were not in a position to assist them. So make sure that you take care of you commit to your work to avoid disappointments like this. And then sometimes it's always, you might find that you're having a query that maybe your tutor is unable to assist you with. Please make sure that you contact the office, because it is your responsibility to make sure that everything is in order with regards to your portfolio of entries. We had experience where parents will call on behalf of the interns. So that is not acceptable. Please make sure that you take responsibility of your work, and no parent should call on your behalf of a family member, because this is difficult for us to deal with them. They can't even provide some of the information that we need to assist. So make sure that you do your part. And then there is also a procedure in case you want to ask for remarking of your entry, or you want to have a consultation with an assessor. That procedure, the procedures are provided in page 42 of your manual. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with them so that you know what to do whenever you need such a service. And then these are some of the unprofessional conducts that we have observed over the years. So please make sure that you stay away from trying to pressurize assessors and moderators to prioritize your entries. Just make sure that you work according to the schedule that we have provided, because these behaviors can lead you into being referred to professional conduct for disciplinary actions to be taken against you. And I don't think you will want to see yourself ending up being disciplined. So let's avoid all those unprofessional conduct. And then here we have provided you with a statistics of the portfolio of evidence outcome for the interns who did their internship in 2023 and also in 2024. So the blue bar is just indicating the percentage of interns who were successful in their portfolio of evidence by January in 2024. So the percentage was 69%. So the 31% was not yet successful, and they had to, unfortunately, we couldn't release them for community service. So we are happy to share with you the percentage for the 2024, because there is a huge improvement of about 11%, because at the moment we are at 80% compliance. So these are the interns who met the POE requirements, and they are now competent in POE. Most of them are even released because they have met other internship requirements. So we are left with this 20% that we are trying to assist so that they can also be competent in the portfolio of evidence. So we're encouraging you to start working now, and we really trusting that the percentage next year will be at 90%, because we are here to give you all the support that we need, and we know that is possible. And then okay, here we're just sharing the information that is also available on the website and also in your manual. There is an annual fee that you need to pay. The fee is 711, and this should be paid by the 1st of June each year. So make sure that you pay so that you don't find yourself being removed from the register of cancer. And then for community service, it is important for you to note that there is what we call ICSP program, which is a program wherein interns are placed for community service. This program is managed by the Department of Health, and they will engage with you during the internship year. Please make sure that you visit their website regularly so that you can know what is happening. And what you need to know is that they can only place you for community service once you have met the internship requirements. So make sure that you do your part so that you don't find yourself being disadvantaged by the end of the year not having a placement for community service. And then this is where you can contact the office by either submitting a query which will be attended to within 14 working days, although we're trying to respond as soon as possible. And alternatively, you can send also an email to this email address, and you will also get assistance. So thank you so much. The questions, we're not going to attend to them here. Like I said, we will see them at the end of once we are done with all the presentation. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague to continue with the portfolio of evidence. Over to you, Mr. Makado.
Yes, Tabang, I can hear you well.
Thank you. We can also hear you. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tabang, and the office, as well as quiz and the interns. So I'll continue with the first session of the presentation in terms of the CPD. I'm just waiting for it to reflect on the screen, then we will get on board. I can see the slides. Yes. Okay, the first session that I want to take you through is the outline of today's presentation in terms of the CPD that you all need to know. So in this presentation, we will be covering the items as you see on the screen, the competency standards like selecting the domain and so forth, but we'll give information as we move on. We'll also cover a portfolio of evidence. As you have heard, Metawang has already spoken about it, but we are still going to give you more information in this presentation. And then we will also have a session on assessment, professionalism, confidentiality, and lastly, the challenging competency standard that we will make you aware about them. But yeah, so that when you do your part, then at least you know which ones are challenging. Yeah, in this slide is maybe to make you aware about the important resources that you need to use. The first one is the 2025 Intern Tutor Manual, which is available from Pharmacy Council website. You can download it probably by this time. You already have it. And then in that manual or within that manual, this is where you can get more information. But for the purpose of this presentation, we only cited maybe a few. For example, if you need to know about the criteria for assessment of the POE entry, so that is available from page 35 up to 37. In a similar way, the checklist, the pages is also indicated, and more information about the competency standard for the pharmacist. They are from page 62 to 84. So that is more information relating to the Intern Tutor Manual. Other resources, as you can see there, your tutor is also a resource, as well as the SAPC website, where you can visit and get more information. Right. These are the POE terminology that you need to be aware of, that you are going to be using. The first one being the domain, as you can see. And under the domain, we'll have a competency standard, as you can see. Then within the competency standard, this is where you get the statement, what we normally refer to as BS. But more information, I think, will take you through and go to the next slide. Right, as you have heard me saying about the domain, the competency standard, and the behavior statement. So now here in this competency framework example, we are showing you an example of a domain, and then we are showing you also how the competency standard will look like, as well as the BS. So first of all, there are 6 domains. So here we've just given you an example of what domain 2 is all about. Domain 2 is about safe and rational use of medicines and medical devices. And like you have seen in the previous slide, under the domain, we have competency standards. So here we have only picked 2 because I think for this domain, we have 8 of them. That is why you see 2.1, 2.2, and then 2.3 to 2.8. So for the purpose of this example, we have given you 2. So meaning that domain, CS 2.1 is about patient consultation, and CS 2.2 is about patient counseling, meaning that if you want to do the CPD or the portfolio of evidence about patient counseling, you will choose domain 2, and then you will choose 2.2 as a competency standard. In each and every competency standard, there are what we call behavioral statements. It varies. Some may have 4, some may have 1 or even 3. So, but this is the example of 2.1 having 8 BS and 2.2 having 9 behavioral statements. I think this is what I've told you in the previous slide when I said that there are 6 domains. My colleagues who will follow me after this presentation, will take you through each and every domain from number 1, public health, up to number 6, education, critical analysis, and research, because as interns, you need to do the CPD at least for each and every domain. That is why you need to understand them. I won't be mentioning them one by one. You'll get used to them as we move on. All right, the competency standard, as I've already indicated to you, colleagues, is part of the domain. And then you just need to understand how does the domain apply to you. And then we were spoken about the competencies and also the BS. I think maybe when we press the button there, you'll see that we have the entry level and advanced practice, which is normally for your case is the in entry level. Then the rest you shouldn't worry about at this stage. Now, to the terminology of the competency standard. When you see CS, it's just an abbreviation for competency standard. Again, we want to give you more details about one of the competency standard under domain number 2. The reason why you see 2 points, so it means this CS is coming from domain number 2, the one that I've been giving example with. So under 2, remember I said 2.2 is about patient counseling. 2.1 is about patient consultation. Now, we are giving you more information on how the competency standard look like, but this time around, we have given you an example of a CS under 2.6 CS, which is pharmacist initiated therapy. As you can see there, this is competency from domain number 2, but CS 2.6. So it is all about pharmacist initiated therapy. Now, once you understand about this, you also need to know the competencies or the behavior statement under that particular domain, which in this case you can clearly see here in a summary slide, because this slide is showing you the domain, which is number 2. And on the right side, now they are listing all the competency standard. You can see 2.6 there. And at the bottom there, 2.6. Then you can see that it is having A, B, C, and D, meaning that 2.6 competency standard is having 4 behavioral statements. And then now, when we mentioned about the portfolio of evidence. So this is used to describe the activities of person not yet considered a professional. So like in your case, you guys you should be able to be doing the POE. Then maybe more information about the CPD. CPD is a cyclical activities, and then it is defined as the process by which registered persons maintain and enhance their competence throughout their professional careers, and it encompasses a range of activities, including continuing education and supplementary training. CPDs enables registered persons. Okay, I think she quickly moved in. It's okay, as you can see there on the last bullet, but let's move on to the next slide. So in the next slide, they are showing you the four phases of the CPD cycle. The first one being the reflection, followed by planning, implementation, and the last one being evaluation. But we'll have more information about them as we move on. Right, you need to understand the assessment of phases of the CPD cycles. As you have seen that we have four phases. So in all these four phases, mostly the scale is from 0 to 3. Then you can see on the right that 0 means not yet meeting the requirements. 1 will be assigned where you partially meet the requirements, and then 2 will be assigned when you meet the requirements, and then 3 is when you fully meet the requirements. So maybe to give you more information about this, to earn or 3 marks, then it means you need to meet all the requirements, as you can see in there. But in addition, you also need to make sure that as you do your portfolio of evidence, you need to make sure that the spelling is correct, grammatical, check the grammatical errors. You check all this, the punctuation, the capitals, whatever name, because like as we can see at the bottom there, the spell check and grammar are not auto-corrected or available at the moment. So you need to make sure that before you can load your evidence, you need to have checked all these issues. Now, under phase number 1, which is a reflection. Under reflection, this is where you start your ball rolling, because this is where you need to start by identifying the title, decide on an appropriate learning title, and the title that you are going to choose, it should be short and precise, and it should be relevant to what you want to learn. My colleagues will give you more information on example of some learning titles, and it should describe what you are intending to do. And we do not encourage you colleagues to simply copy either the wording from the competency standard or the behavior, because in most cases we do see interns just copying the CS or the BS. The learning title must be unique and describe your case study. And then under reflection, you need to ask yourself, what do I need to learn? It shouldn't be someone's learning need, it should be your own learning need. That is why you need to describe what you want to learn. And then how do I know that, so what I need to learn, what will I do with what I've learned? So basically here, you need to tell us what made you do this particular CPD or POE, and then what got you to do this, because that is what we need to know from you. What was your learning need? And it should not be anybody's learning need. It should be your own learning need. Should describe the learning need in this particular manner. You need to make it a personal reflection, like using the personal pronoun I. I've seen cases where an intern will be using you in distant. So I encourage you to do that, to use the personal pronoun, as you can see in the example, and be careful not to describe the learning need of the patient. So remember, this is your CPD, this is your POE, it is you who need to tell us what is your learning need. And the learning need must be related to the selected outcome. These are the criteria of assessment. when you have written your reflection, your title, of course, it needs to be assessed. So without maybe going into each and every one, you can quickly see that the zero, I mean, the title is having either the 0 or a 1. So meaning that if your title is not related to the domain or the CS, you cannot get a 1, then you get 0. If you copy from the CS on the BS, again, you'll be getting a 0. And then in terms of the learning need, you can see we have 0, 1, 2, 3. Normally, when you give us an irrelevant learning need, you'll be assigned 0. But if you generally describe the role of pharmacists without maybe giving us what made you learn these things, you are going to get 1. But for you to get full marks, obviously you need to tell us what are the learning needs, the trigger, and also what are you expecting to achieve at the end of this or after completing this CPT or this POE. Then in that case, you will be able to get full 3 marks. These are the checklist, like after maybe completing your reflection exercise, you can go through the checklist to check whatever way. I'm not going to go through each and every checklist, but normally is to check if you have included the important things, like, for example, did you clearly state what you needed to learn? And then before you can submit, we encourage you to go through this checklist. This checklist is available for each and every phase. The second phase is the planning. So under planning, colleagues, we want you to remember that the planning should be in future tense. We have seen a couple of the interns writing it in past tense, whatever way. A plan is something that you are going to do, so it should always be in future tense. And then you need to refer to the BS and structure planning accordingly. And then when you plan, of course, during planning, you may need to tell us what resources you are going to be using, because if you are to plan maybe reading a particular book, you need to tell us why do you want to read that particular book, that particular chapter. You indicate the specific resource that we are going to use. And that is why here we are saying when you include that resources, you also need to include the reason why do you want to, why in this particular instance, you are reading chapter 2 of the GPP. So the reasoning part should also be included in your planning. And then your planning should also at least cover at least 25% of the BS, meaning that for you to get full marks, as you're going to see under the criteria, so you should have satisfied all that information. So which is the future trends, the reasoning, the specific resources, and linking to the BS. Do not only describe how you plan to proceed, but say what you are going to do, how you are going to do it, and why you are going to do things this way, as well as when you are going to do. So that summarizes the planning, but you'll see more when you go to the criteria. Yeah, these are the criteria of assessment on where you're going to be allocated marks. For example, as usual, if your planning is not relating to what you're talking about, then you're going to be given 0. So like I said to you, maybe in summary here, there are 4 things that we are looking for under planning. It should be in future tense. There should be some reasoning. There should be sufficient information on the resources you're going to be using, and it should be linking to the behavior statement. So in the event that you cover all that, you should be able to get the 3. Otherwise, if you get 2 of them, you get 1. If you get 3 out of 4, then you are going to get 2. That is how the scoring is all about. And this information, you are going to be getting these slides maybe in the near future anyway. Good. I think we can go to, the planning. Again, if I've mentioned to you that the checklist, the same thing that I've mentioned, is just to help you check, or did I include the reasoning? Did I include whatever? Then from there, you will be moving on to the third phase, which is the implementation. Implementation, colleagues, this is where you remember you will have said you plan to do whatever. Then now here, you need to tell us how, to describe how you have done it. So describe what you actually did. So this cannot be in the future now. This can be seen in the past tense. Tell us what you have done. Provide the context, like the what, the when, the where, and the how. And more importantly, link your description to the behavioral statements. And you also need to also link that to the evidence. Remember to include all the behavioral statements on the chosen outcome. And then implementation is written in the past tense. For example, I did. We'll look at the criteria in the next slide. Yes, the criteria for the implementations. The first one is the achievement date. Invalid achievement date, not within the internship period or before the start date. Normally here you see interns putting the the achievement date, they say, of last month, and then down the line, then they are putting today. So make sure that all your days are aligned, whatever way, like it is being recommended in here. Under the implementation, again, we'll be checking all these activities, like what we are seeing. And this slide is more about the evidence. Whatever you said you have done, we need to see it in writing, and we also need this also need to be supported by the evidence. And under evidence, maybe let me just go one by one here. Under evidence, the zero, if you attach, if you don't attach any evidence, or you attach but it's not valid, you are going to get zero. For you to obtain one, you will have given us maybe the valid, authentic information, but that information won't be probably linking to 100% of the BS, and maybe there may not be annotation. So in that case, you are going to get one. But if you have valid information and it's showing 100% of the BS, but it is annotated, and in that annotation, you do not show how each and every BS was achieved. So in this case, you will get 2 years. You have annotated, but it's a blanket annotation. It does not tell us how did you achieve each and every BS. For you to get 3 points, you will have done all that, and in particular, you will have indicated that this evidence is talking to this particular BS, but my colleague Adele on 11 will give you more information. I think we can pass the checklist because it's something similar to what we have seen in the previous one. And then, this is the checklist for the evidence as well, just to remind you if you have done the annotation. And the last phase that I want to talk about today is evaluation. Colleagues, under evaluation, you need to focus on the learning outcome. What have you learned related to the evidence? Application, for example, how have you subsequently used your acquired knowledge? The impact, how has your acquired knowledge, how has the acquired knowledge changed your practice? And lastly, identification of further learning needs relating to the competency that you are talking about. So basically here, there are 4 things that your colleagues need to be aware of when you write the evaluation. Tell us what you have learned. How does the learning influence the way you practice? And then how have the acquired knowledge changed the way you practice? Giving example. And then lastly, you need to tell us what are the further learning needs that you need to do. In that case, you'll be able to get all full marks. Yeah, these are the criteria for evaluating this particular component or phase. And in most cases, I think interns, from experience, they will most probably write what they've learned. They'll also write what their future learning need is. But the other two, how did the learning influence the way of learning in practice is normally missing, and also how did they apply the new learning? So those two are always missing. So we're just making you aware that when you're in this session, please make sure that you cover all these 4 areas that I've indicated. And then the checklist, I think, maybe let me quickly go on this one. I think it wants you to state what you have learned, and then check that my learning need matches the learning. Okay, I clearly describe how this learning need has impacted on the way of practice, and have I given a specific example of how I've applied. So these two in particular, they are mostly missing in intense work. Then lastly, you need to also indicate the future. So there are 4 things here that you need. Let me repeat. You need to indicate what you have learned. Number 2, you need to describe how the learning has impacted on the way of practice. Number 3, you need to tell us how did you apply this in your knowledge? And then number 4, you need to clearly indicate the future learning need. In this way, you'll get full marks in this particular phase. And then that concludes my session. Adele will take you to the next section. I'm not sure, if there'll be break, but the office will advise. Adele, over to you. Thank you. Adele, can you hear me? Tan, can you hear me?
Hi, Makadu, thank you. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, Makadu. Good evening, colleagues. I'm sorry for the delay. We have a little bit of a storm in Potch and I had a bad signal. And I'm Adele Nadir, and I will be taking you through the next part of the session. And we will touch on a few things that Tabang has said and a few things that Makadu has said, just to bring everything back into context. And then Veni will finish the session up for us. So first of all, we're going back to a stepwise approach, and everybody's spoken about this. So first of all, you're going to select your domain. You're going to select your competency standard. You're going to read all the behavioral statements. You're going to start on the CPD platform. You're going to start the portfolio of evidence submission. And then just to highlight again, it's very important you now saw the step for the plagiarism report, and you remember that your tutor has to verify everything online, so you cannot submit on the last day of submission. You have to plan successfully because your tutor needs to verify and then submit online. Remember, once you submit, it goes to your tutor. From your tutor, it goes to the assessor. From the assessor, it goes to the moderator. And only then, on the dates specified in the manual, it will be released for you to see the results, and you will get your feedback. And remember, you have to complete your annual declaration before you can start completing your portfolio of evidence entries. So first, so you can see we've spoken about that. Mr. Makadu has explained the 4 steps very nicely to you. And lastly, please make sure of the verification. So I'm going to we have chosen our competency standard. And again, we've selected something that's appropriate for our practice setting. And my colleagues will speak about this as well. Certain competency standards you cannot do. For example, if you're an academic intern or if you are working in manufacturing, there are specific competency standards that is applicable to you. So you will have to decide what is appropriate for your practice setting. Then you will have to decide what is the evidence that I will need for every behavioral statement. And then you can follow through with each phase of the CPD cycle. For my own interns, I do suggest that they complete it in a Word document, make sure that everything is done, everything is checked, and then they just copy it into Council's website. That also makes it easier that you don't have to be online for a long time. So complete everything, do your phases, make sure that you are in the word count, complete it, and then copy it into the system. And always for your CPD, refer to the checklist. Makadu has shown you the checklist. Please use them. You can see that is exactly what the assessors and moderators use to assess you. That is the memorandum for these submissions. So please make use of the checklist that you can find in the manual, and the pages were referred to in this presentation. So the requirement, Tabang also spoke about this. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you have to do one CPD from each domain. You have to be successful in all 6 of your entries, and you have to do CS 5.3. You'll remember Tabang said you have to submit 5.3 within domain 5. And then we always tell the interns, please do not submit all 6 CPD entries at once. But do not wait until the end of the year to submit all 6 CPDs. Try to submit as early as possible and as regularly as possible. So after tonight, start working on a few of your CPDs. In the next cycle, decide you want to submit 2 CPDs in the next cycle, the cycle after that 2 again or 3 again, and wait for feedback. See if you're doing something wrong, see if there's a silly mistake that you're making that you can fix for the rest. So please allow some time, but don't wait until the end that you get into a situation where you have to pass all 6 your CPD on your first attempt to be able to write the exam. So for each domain, you have to choose one competency standard. So you'll be tired tonight, but over the weekend, take your manual, go and read through the domains, select a competency standard that you think might be applicable to you, look at the behavioral statements, and then you start thinking, okay, I need to learn this might be applicable to me, and start planning your CPDs even before you have started. So if you look at the behavioral statements, you'll remember Mr. Makado said if you 2.6 has 4 behavioral statements, some of them have 1 and some of them have 8 or 9 behavioral statements. So if there's 1 to 3 behavioral statements for the competency standard, you will need to provide evidence for all of the behavioral statements. If there are 4 and more behavioral statements in a competency standard, say for example 2.6 had 4, you will have to provide evidence for 75% of them, which means 3 of them you will have to provide evidence for. I always tell my own interns, if possible, do all of them. If you have evidence, submit them. Maybe you think you addressed the behavioral statement fully, but the assessor might not agree, or there might be something missing. So if you have the evidence, try to provide evidence for 100% of them, but you have to address at least 75% of them. So please check your manual. It's very important to always have your manual handy to make your selections. Very important, the plagiarism software as well. It has to be your own work, individual work for your CPDs, and no group work is allowed for CPD submissions. So you have to plan and execute your own CPD and not as a group. So now we're getting more into evidence. Evidence is very important for your CPD because that is where you show us what you actually did. You provide the evidence for the assessor and the moderator to see, because remember, they're not there. So you have to provide the picture of everything that happened in the pharmacy. So what is the criteria for evidence? So for evidence, we talk about annotated, we talk about current, we talk about valid, we talk about authentic and sufficient. So we will go into each of these now separately, but these are all the criteria that you have to adhere to for your evidence to be successful. So first of all, we're going to have a look at annotation, and annotations are extremely important for your evidence, because the annotation is what gives the evidence meaning. The annotation is what tells the story to show what you've done. We see a lot of times interns, for example, scan a page from the GPP and there's no annotation. So we don't know why this page is there. What did you do with this page? What did you want to show with this page? And that is where annotation comes in, and that is very important. So what is annotation? It's a way to give meaning to the evidence. And please, it should be legible. You don't have to type it, but you can write it neatly. It justifies the inclusion of the evidence. You must plan, and it must be meaningful. So don't put in the whole Pharmacy Act, just put in the relevant section of the Pharmacy Act or the relevant section of the Medicines Act and show why you have included it. And then very important, you must link a piece of evidence to a behavioral statement to give it meaning. Why is it there? What should this piece of evidence prove? So what is annotation not? It's not just a label. It's not a single word. It's not a scribble. And it has to link to a behavioral statement. Otherwise, it has no use or no meaning, and you've included it for no reason. So just a few examples to show you what a meaningful annotation and an annotation with no value is. You can see on the one side, we have this is the date of the prescription. So if you think to yourself, if someone says, this is the date, and you say, I know, I can see this is the date, but why is the date important? And that's what you have to tell us. You must tell me, the prescription is valid because the prescription was written within the last 30 days. And as the Medicines Act states, a prescription is only valid from the date that it was written for 30 days. Therefore, this prescription is valid. So you can see, if you want to show me you know a prescription is valid, you have to annotate properly so that the assessor can see you understand the regulation and you are able to apply the regulation. Again, with annotation, you can see there's a few scribbles. So we have an account number, we have the medicine that was ordered, we have the batch numbers, but we don't know why it's there. What does this intern want to say? To what does it link? Which competency standard? Which behavioral statement? Why is the medicine ordered important? Are we looking at the expiry date? Why is this here? So you can see this has absolutely no meaning, and we don't know why it was included. The next one, it was typed very nicely, but again, what about the medicine name? Why was the medicine name, the batch number, and the expiry date important within the context of the competency standard? Which behavioral statement says that the name and the expiry date and the batch number is important? So you can have a look at this one, and then you can decide, is this good? Is this meaningful? And the next one, if we look at this one, we can see the intern said, I checked the name of the pharmacy on the parcel to confirm that it is indeed for this pharmacy. I checked the medicine, the name, the strength, and the pack size. I checked the expiry date, and then at the top you can see it links to 3.2E. So there you can see, and I think you will agree with me, that this has a lot of meaning. If I see this from an intern, I will know exactly what this intern did, why this was important, and you can see it's not only labels, you can see why it was included, and you can follow the story that this intern is trying to convey and what this intern is trying to tell us. So you can see the quality of the annotations, and I think you would agree with me that this one is very good. Next, we go on to current. So your evidence should be current, and that means it can only be collected or done after you have registered as an intern. So please, no undergraduate work, no undergraduate research, anything that you did, if you went to a clinic, you made a poster, anything like that, nothing may be included as part of your evidence, only evidence collected during your internship while you are registered under your tutor. The next one is valid. The evidence must pertain to a specific competency being addressed. Say, for example, if we talk about valid, you want to show that you can apply the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, but you've attached the Pharmacy Act. So it's not valid in that case. So what you're trying to prove should be linked to the evidence. That evidence should actually relate to what you are trying to say. The other thing, if you make any factual mistakes or any calculation errors, your evidence is automatically deemed not valid and you will not pass the CPD. So valid is very, very important. If the evidence is not valid, you can see the other 4 criteria for evidence does not count and you will not be successful. So for example, if the competency standard is how to fry an egg and you've given us evidence about crispy bacon, it has no value and you will not be successful and it is not valid. The next criteria for evidence, it should be authentic. Authentic means it's your own work and your tutor should verify online that this is your own work as an intern. So please make sure that your tutor verifies your TPD in time to be assessed, and it is your responsibility to remind your tutor that you've submitted and that they need to be verified by the tutor. Your evidence must be authenticated. So the tutor will assist you with that. You can sign your evidence if you have an invoice and you check the invoice and you sign on there. Show us this is my signature. This is me. I'm the academic intern. There should be co-signatures. So if you dispense, all of us in community pharmacy, there's a pharmacist that signed it off. Identify that signature. So show us under whose supervision that was done and identify all the signatures that is on your evidence. I spoke about sufficient. You remember if it should be enough. So if there are 4 or more behavioral statements, you should provide evidence for at least 75% of them. If there are 3 behavioral statements and less, you have to provide evidence for all the behavioral statement. It's important to remember that you can use one piece of evidence for more than one behavioral statement within a specific activity, but you cannot use the same piece of evidence in more than one CPD, in more than one domain. So you cannot use it in 5.3, for example, but the same prescription you want to use in 3.4. So the same piece of evidence cannot be used in more than one competency standard. And as I've stated, please do not submit a whole law, not the whole Pharmacy Act, just the relevant pieces that you've identified and annotate them properly why you have included that. Please make sure, especially for our manufacturing interns, if there are intellectual property issues, make sure that you are allowed to upload this. If you have to block out everything, rather select something else that you are able to submit, because if everything is blocked out, there is nothing to assess. So we quickly have a poll. Natalie, I don't know if you will, if it has been posted in the chat. So I quickly want to ask the interns, if you have a competency standard and there are 8 behavioral statements, for how many behavioral statements do you need to provide evidence for? And Natalie, do we have any results in the poll?
The results are coming in slowly, Adele, but they are there.
Okay, I just need to minimize my screen to see. Okay, 6. Okay, so all the interns are correct. We have 6. Okay, so I see we have a lot of correct results. Okay. 54 says 6 CPD, 6 behavioral statements, and that is correct. If we have 8 behavioral statements, we have to provide evidence for at least 6 of them. Okay, well done. Okay, thanks, Natalie. I see the interns know how much evidence to provide, so I am sure all of you will have sufficient evidence for your CPD to be successful. So now we still continue on evidence. So as you can see, the number of slides we put to evidence is very, very important. So if we look at photographs, if you add a photograph, the photograph should be stamped. There should be a date on there. We have to know when it was taken. It should be authenticated. We should know on the photograph who you are. Otherwise, it can be anyone, because your assessor doesn't know you. They don't know who you are. Very important to maintain patient confidentiality on photographs and images. So it's very important to keep that in mind for your patient confidentiality on your photographs. Pages from the SAMF, for example, you have to list the edition of the resource. So for the example, if you look at the little picture, it's the SAMF, the 11th edition for this one. Make sure that you use the latest one. So in your planning, you will tell us, I will use the SAMF, the 11th edition, page 27, and the reason why. And remember the annotation. So don't just scan in the page from the SAMF. Remember, if we said you just scan in the page, it has no meaning. The only thing it shows us that you are able to scan. We don't know why this is there. What do you want to prove, or what do you want to show the assessor? Circle things on there, show us what information you used, show us why it was important. For delivery notes, for example, so what do you want to show us with the delivery note? The stock was delivered, but who received it? Did you sign it? Did somebody else sign it? Did you witness it? So you must annotate the signatures, tell us who signed for it, show your signature, show your tutor's signature, or whoever the stock controller, whatever you want to show on that delivery note or invoice or what the case may be, annotate clearly so that we can see why it is included and what the relevance is. Remember, link it to a behavioral statement. So again, put yourself in the assessor or the moderator's shoe. They are not with you in the pharmacy. So what does this piece of evidence show? And will it show exactly what I want to say with this? For example, we get a photograph with the intern with a telephone next to the ear and saying, this is me calling the doctor. And as you can think now, that will not be sufficient to prove that you actually spoke to a doctor. Still on evidence, please no high glossy photos. When you scan it in, it's very difficult to read that. Nothing that's upside down. The evidence must be clearly legible. It must be in one PDF document, please. It's very easy to tell a story if it's in one PDF document and it has a nice flow and a nice story. It's easy to read and you can see where all the behavioral statements are addressed. Again, we cannot stress that enough. Annotate, annotate, annotate. Link the evidence to the behavioral statement. Show which behavioral statement you are addressing with each piece of evidence. Identify yourself, identify your signature, and identify why this piece of evidence is included in this submission. Tabang, I just want to know if we should take a break for a few minutes before I continue with what kind of evidence. Just if they want a body break for a few minutes, we are at the break time at this stage?
Okay, thank you, Adele. Yes, we can take a break. So we will be back at it's supposed to be 10 minutes at 10:55, 19:55.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tabang. Thank you, everyone. Just a 10-minute body break. So if you can just quickly want to stretch your legs, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Colleagues, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your body break, and we will continue with the last few slides about your evidence before we continue with the rest of the presentation. So first of all, what kind of evidence? For example, if you are providing information to a patient, what do you think can be included? If we think a patient came into the pharmacy with a prescription, so then we would want the prescription. Say, for example, you said you did a therapeutic review, then we would want to see the PI, maybe we want to see part of the SAMF or something like that. So depending on what the behavioral statement requires, you can see that there would be different documents that would be added to this submission. If you are providing evidence to a group of people, what do you think will be good evidence there? So there you might think to include an attendance register, the presentation that you used, or the poster, or the handouts that you made. We want to see the reference materials you used to make your handout. We want to see some feedback that you received on your presentation or on the day or the success of the campaign or what the case may be. So you can think out of the box. What would be good evidence to prove the behavioral statement? What's very important for attendance registers, it can't just be a page with a lot of signatures. We want to have a presenter name, a date, a venue, the one presenter that there was, remember, no group activities, and we want to see the attendance register. Don't black out everything, but just black out enough so that we can see that somebody actually signed that page, how many people attended your campaign, for example, or your presentation. And we want to have feedback on that presentation. And you can see there on the slide, it should reflect the knowledge and the understanding of the audience. Did they understand the information? And then very important to annotate that and to link it to a behavioral statement. If you want to show us that you can provide information clearly and effectively, then we would want to see that the people receiving the information understood the information. So you can really be creative. There's a lot of evidence that you can include, but just think critically, what will prove that I am able to do this, or to show the assessor that you are able to do this and that you did that in your activity. So you say, I'm consulting a patient. So what can we have a look at there? So you can include a patient history, you can include a prescription, a request from a patient, a blue copy, a label, the reference material you used, either the PIs, the SAMF, or whatever you used in the pharmacy. You can include that. Very important. Not Wikipedia, not chat, not anything like that. Please use scientific references. And link that to the behavioral statements. So what if I'm consulting a prescriber or a doctor? What would be good pieces of evidence there? We want the reason for the consultation. Say, for example, there was an interaction on the prescription, or the patient was allergic to something on the prescription. We want the reason, the reference material you use to ensure, say, for example, the doctor wanted some alternatives, or there was an allergy, as we stated. What can the patient use? We want the telephone number of the doctor. We want the time of the conversation and someone to verify that the conversation actually took place. We talk about a photo in this instance. In some cases, a photograph can be very valid and very good evidence. For example, showing us how you compound something, but you standing with the phone next to your ear is not good evidence to prove that you are actually speaking to a doctor. So decide on the validity of the evidence and if it actually proves what you want the evidence to prove. Everything must be annotated and linked to the behavioral statements. And I've repeated that so many times so you can see how important it is. And for every reference, you have to include the page, the edition, for example, for the SAMF, for the GPP, if you include the section where you found that, all the information, and remember, show us why it is relevant to your submission. So sometimes you attend a meeting. What can be relevant there then? The agenda, the attendance register, the minutes of the meeting, and very important, if you want to use a meeting and you want to show us that you achieved or you got a skill from that, you have to prove what was your contribution in the meeting. Just sitting in the meeting and attending the meeting doesn't prove that you are now able to do something or that you acquired a skill. So it's very important to describe your own contribution and clearly state what you want to prove by attending this meeting. If you're working with data, so you have data collection, you have a screening report, you have data analysis, for example, if you have a research, you want to do a research report, then you will show us your research proposal, you will have the data collection, how you did your screenings, how you analyzed the data, how you made your conclusions, and you will write that up. So you can see you can be very creative in deciding what you want to include in your evidence. Again, as Mr. Makadu said, there's a checklist for all the phases and for evidence. So the checklist is again very important. You can see, please use them, evaluate your own CPD before you send it to your tutor, and have you included sufficient evidence? Is every piece of evidence annotated? Again, you can see how important it is. Have I annotated my evidence with the behavioral statement and the meaning? Is the evidence clear, readable, not uploaded upside down? Patient confidentiality is protected. Make sure if you convert something to PDF, sometimes that blocks move. Make sure it's still protected. And have I made sure, the last point you can see, have all the patient information been hidden? So in summary, evidence is proof of what you did. It's not merely reading an article. We want to see how you use the information in the article. It's not only theoretical. Some interns like or choose medicine recall and make it theoretical, and there were no actual medicine recall, so then you cannot use that. It's not witnessing anybody else doing this. You have to show us that you can do this. You learned a new skill. You are able to do what you have indicated your learning need was in the beginning. Please be professional and neat and make everything legible and clearly visible for assessment. So now I will give over to my colleague to continue the presentation, and I hope all the success for your CPDs for this year.
Thank you, Adele. Are you able to see my screen? Adele, can you come?
Yes, we're just waiting for this slide to come up. It's still a white screen.
Now, Lavinia, it's not
Try
coming
again.
up. Can you, unshare and then share again?
Is it fine now?
No, we're still not seeing.
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Professor Nilavani Pagliacci. I'm from Wits University, and I am a moderator. So this session is going to be a bit more interactive. And before we begin, I'd just like to mention that you have the intern manual at hand, because it is a good resource for the next few sessions. Slides, sorry. So please, if you could always remember that the intern manual is really your Bible to be able to assist you throughout the process as an intern. So whenever you need a resource to guide you, that really is the most important source for you to be able to identify any problem areas that you may be encountering. And it really is a great guide to help you through the process. So in the first example here of portfolio of evidence entry, we want to give you a poll. Actually, is this in the chat already? So the trigger incident is demonstrate public health campaign. So just to answer that question for me. Just give you a few seconds more. Are we able to see any results as yet? Yes, Natalie, thank you. So essentially what the task is requesting of you is to be able to identify, based on a scenario that you have been exposed to, which of the domains would most be suitable for that particular trigger incident. So in this case, it was a public health campaign. So how would you manage that particular process, and how would you align it to which competency standard? Thank you, Natalie. So we have 31 respondents and all of them are correct, and it is the correct answer, which is domain 1. Thanks, Natalie. Screen. So as you can see, the relevant domain is domain 1, public health, and it would be competency standard 1.1, which is promotion of health and wellness. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really just to be able to show you which how a particular trigger incident or learning episode can align to a specific competency standard. So public health domain is domain 1. And what I want to emphasize is the importance of reading through your manual very thoroughly to be able to give you better insight as to what you want to execute, or how you want to execute what you need to do to fulfill the requirements of the assessors and the moderators, as per the grid that Adele and Mikado has referred to earlier. So if you look at 1.1, promotion of health and wellness, it has 4 behavioral statements. And each behavioral statement is linked to a specific area. So if you look at 1.1a, it says provide advice on health promotion, provide advice on, yes.
Can you just put your slides into presentation mode for me, please?
Hi. Oh, sure, no problem, sorry.
Thanks.
Can you see them now? Okay, great. Thank you. So as I was saying, provide advice on disease prevention and control, provide advice on healthy lifestyles, and participate in public health campaigns. So if you look at the description of this particular domain, it says in both the public and private healthcare sectors to promote health and wellness through the provision of healthcare information and education to the public and healthcare team. Now, although the domain says public health, and as you can see, the description is related to the promotion of health and wellness, essentially what we want to be able to see here is how you have zoned in on your skills on how you're going to present this particular learning aspect. So yes, you're going to cover all of these advice on promotion, health promotion, disease prevention and control, but at the same time, we want to say what we want to see from you.
Sorry, Nelivini, we're having a problem. I don't know why, but would you mind if Adele shares the slides and then you can talk through them?
Yeah, sure, that'll be fine.
Right.
Is it reflecting on the screen?
Some people are saying they can't see the slides at all, and I can see them, but they're not in presentation mode, which is very strange. Okay, there we go. Now Adele has them up, so you can carry on.
Adele
Thanks.
can walk me through the slides. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, with domain public health and domain one, essentially 1.1, the skill I want to be able to show there is the ability to zone in on your presentation skills. Adele, I'm not seeing anything on the screen. Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening. Is the PowerPoint slide on the screen, Natalie?
Yes, it is. Penny, I think it's your connection, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you want to try and log off and log back in again and see if that fixes the problem.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a sec. Let me do that. Thank you. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now, Natalie?
Can you hear you? Can you see the slides?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as I was saying, in essence, what we want to do is for you to emphasize the ability to promote health and wellness, but also to hone in on your skills on how you're going to present these aspects. With 1.1, one of the common errors that I find as a moderator is the inability to identify clearly what component falls within health promotion of your presentation, that is, which part is disease prevention and control, what is the healthy lifestyles that you are promoting, and how are you participating in public health campaigns. Next slide, Adele, thank you. So I'll show you an example of what we're talking about, but for now, if you could just do the poll for me, which is choosing the most appropriate learning title. So in terms of promoting health and wellness, which one, if the area of promotion is on COVID-19, what title do you think would be the best title to describe your particular exercise for this CPD based on all the skills that you've learned now with Adele and Mikado? I'll give you 30 seconds to complete that. Okay, wonderful. So we have 11 responses, and that's the correct one. So it's what we're trying to show or reflect here is how important it is for you to be descriptive in your title, but not copying exactly what comes out of the competency standard and that particular description of that competency standard. As you can see, the description is promotion, health and wellness. We don't want to see that in the title. We want to be able to see that you understand what you are delivering to us and giving us a title that's really succinct. So essentially, be as descriptive as possible, but be clear as well, but do not copy what comes straight out of the competency standard. So if you could tackle the next poll as well for me, appreciate that. So the question there is, which is the best learning need based on the competency standard? So question 4 says, the options are, I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns. I needed to learn how to speak in public, and I needed to learn how to teach. So remember what Adele and Mikado has described. So what do you think would be the best learning need for this particular competency standard 1.1? Give you 30 seconds for that. Remember what your learning need is, what your trigger was, and that's how you would incorporate it into the description of your learning need in the reflection component. The 41 respondents and okay, so the answer, the most, okay, 75, and the respondents said, I need to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaign, which is 90. So somebody opted for, I needed to learn how to teach. So I can understand why you think that is, but it's not descriptive enough to be able to identify completely what we want out of this particular competency standard. So remember, not only are you teaching, but you're also providing advice and you're participating within a particular public health campaign. If you say, I'm just going to teach, it's really broad. It's not specific to this particular competency standard, and it doesn't give the assessor and moderator a clear direction as to what to anticipate. Remember, your CPD is literally your story that you are trying to execute. You're telling a story to the assessor and moderator of what you're going to do, and you're painting a picture. So your picture really needs to give the essence of the story. So in your reflection, as we've described, so the learning title, Participation in a COVID-19 Health Campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. Remember, this is purely an example, just to show you what the ideal should be. So what triggered the learning need? My pharmacy manager asked me to participate in a COVID-19 health campaign, and I did not know what this entailed. Your learning need was, I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns. And what do I hope to achieve? I hope to be familiar with the steps required to plan and successfully participate in a public health campaign. So in your reflection component, the learning title is part of the, you'll see it as an option, but the rest of it, from what triggered the learning need, and what do I hope to achieve, is part of the reflection process. So just remember that when you are describing the reflection component, ideally, these are the headings you need to cover. So what triggered the learning, what is the learning need, and what do you hope to achieve? So in order to be fully competent in that area, those are the areas that as assessors and moderators we look for. Remember, it's just telling a story and we are able to see where the story is going. In your planning section, planning is sometimes problematic because interns fail to give us clear resources. So stating just a resource like World Health Organization policy and guidelines is insufficient. You need to be able to give us detail. Which chapter are you talking about? Which document are you referring to? What are the page numbers? Even go to the extent of which paragraph you're referring to, if it's relevant. And then link that particular resource to your behavioral statement. So if we look at this example, plan to make a poster using relevant, which is valid, current, authentic, sufficient resources or sources, which includes the National Department of Health, World Health Organization policies and guidelines, Pharmacy Council website, and relevant details, which is the chapter page numbers need to be included in that description. So I will include information on health promotion, which is relevant to behavioral statement A, healthy lifestyles, behavioral statement C, Disease prevention and control, behavioral statement B. So you verify the poster with your tutor. You use the poster in your health campaigns. You get feedback via an attendance register, which is linked to behavioral statement D. You obtain the participation letter, which is behavioral statement D. I plan to participate in the COVID-19 screening using the screening tool, also relevant to behavioral statement D. And why? I did all this in order to be able to participate in a public health campaign. So you go back to your learning need. So your planning describes in depth what resources you're going to use, which page numbers, etc., and the chapter, and how it's all relevant to your specific behavioral statements in detail. Next slide. Implementations. Implementation is also a challenging section for interns, and we find most of the time evidence in this component is insufficient, and therefore the intern gets a 0. So just be very vigilant in this section as well. Here, what the expectation is in the description. So you need to cover those key points of how, what, how, when, where, and how. So I'll go through them carefully now. So the first one is how. I consulted the following sources, which is the National Department of Health, evidence A, which relates to 1.A behavioral statement, and World Health Organization policies and guidelines. To be specific as to which policies and guidelines, evidence B, 1.1B, and the Pharmacy Council website, evidence C, 1.1C, stating exactly which is the relevant evidence that applies. So what did you do? I formulated the poster to use in the campaign, and you show how you formulated the poster, which is the poster as your evidence, evidence D, 1.1A to C. So remember, A to C covers lifestyle, health promotion, etc., that I referred to earlier. So make sure that you show and you reflect from via annotation where in the poster this relates to all of those behavioral statements. The how, when, and where. So I presented the poster at the COVID-19 screening area at the entrance of the hospital on a busy outpatient day. Evidence E, which reflects the attendance register, making sure that you're maintaining patient confidentiality, which is 1.1D. So there you can see it covers the how, the when, and the where did it happen. The next component is how. I did the screening using the screening tool that you had mentioned in your planning. So remember, your implementation must relate to your planning, and they must tie in together with the behavioral statements. And this refers to evidence F. Remember, each of your evidence needs to be labeled accordingly, so we can refer to it when we're looking at your evidence, so it makes sense in your story that you are telling. So 1.1D refers to that behavioral statements in relation to the screening tool. I received the feedback from my supervisor and obtained the letter of participation from the health and safety manager, evidence G, 1.1D. Next slide. So here we want to know, what do you think are some of the examples of evidence you think would be suitable for this particular competency standard, bearing in mind what I've just described with all of the evidence descriptions in the previous implementation and planning. I'll just give you 30 seconds for that. So be descriptive. What do you think would be some of the examples? Don't give me exactly what I showed you before, but think out of the box, some of the evidence that you think would be relevant. Could it be the Pharmacy Act or the Medicines Act? Do you think that's related? Could it be a pamphlet? Could it be the standard treatment guidelines? What do you think would be relevant when it comes to, and if you think back to COVID-19, you know, where were you looking for information? And so yeah, we're able to see some results, please. Okay, I see pamphlet, poster, good pharmacy practice, register, feedback forms, that's great. Creating something that you could give to your patient. Excuse me, post questionnaire, yes, that's great. questionnaire tool, feedback forms, treatment guidelines, signs and symptoms, campaign poster. Okay, wonderful. So you're on the right track. So remember, it's key that you be very clear where that particular evidence aligns to your behavioral statement. Make sure you annotate. Again, you're telling a story, we need to be able to see what the picture is that goes with your story. So always related to the behavioral statement. Okay, so we've given you some examples. So source documents you could use is the good pharmacy practice, providing the chapter, page number, be descriptive, health education tools like the poster, pamphlet, as lots of you mentioned, a presentation, maybe a PowerPoint presentation that you provided to your audience, letter of participation, highlighting your role, the attendance register, maintaining patient confidentiality, and where does it fit in above, how many behavioral statements have you covered? So make sure, remember the rule that applied with the number of pieces of evidence based on the number of behavioral statements there are. So if it's 4 and more, you need to have 75%. If it's 3 and less, you need to cover all of those behavioral statements. So make sure you fulfill all those rules and always have your intern manual at hand to be able to guide you. One of the things I wanted to mention with evidence as well, make sure that the pictures you are taking are authentic pictures and not pictures of your friends or participants. You know, we've seen a lot of that recently as well. So, you know, interns are submitting evidence of pictures of audience, of participants within a public health campaign that look really like their friends. So just be aware of that. Sometimes no people there at all and just blocking it out. So please make sure you provide, remember, this is a professional environment and we expect you to behave professionally. Evaluation, by the way, a lot of the assessors and moderators do come from academia, so we are familiar with our students and we are able to identify our students even in the pictures. So just be aware of that. The evaluation is the last component, also a very troublesome component. And here what's mostly lacking is a description of future learning need. But let's go through each one. So you need to be able to and remember to cover each of those components. So what was learned? I learned how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns. How the learning influenced your practice. So I would like to learn more on providing advice to other healthcare workers. So remember your initial audience was to the public. Now you're saying you want to learn how to deliver this to healthcare workers, where you will change the way you deliver your information based on the skill that you learned when you gave that to the public. Applications in practice, I subsequently participated in a diabetic screening day and I'm more aware of public health issues. And then your future learning need, I'm now more confident to volunteer to participate in public health campaigns. So just remember, if you cover all of these key areas within your description, you can get full marks of 3 and be fully competent in that section. Next slide. So feedback from assessors is a challenge. What we're finding is that interns are not heeding the comments by assessors or moderators, and sometimes comments are given in detail, but we see the same submissions coming back to us. So please, the assessors and moderators take time to be able to give you feedback that is relevant to your submission, to put you on the right track, to be able to guide you, because we want you to pass, we want you to move on to the next step. So follow the guidance, follow the comments. It's really great comments, good feedback. And if you do that, you're more likely to be successful in your submission. So remember, the comments are dated, positive feedback is generally given on where you are on the right track, and then negative feedback in terms of negative being that to give you direction as to where you potentially went wrong and how you could improve and what the assessor or the moderator is looking for and what you're potentially missing. Important that you have evidence that is annotated well and annotated as Adele has shown you. Be descriptive in your annotation. The more you describe, the more information, more arrows, more red blocks that you put in, it really gives a better picture to the story. So remember the comments are guidelines for the next entries as well, even if attached to an entry as being competent. So have a look at the competent ones as well. The assessor may have given you comments on how you can improve on it, even though you've passed, but potentially you've missed certain components to it, and it will help you for the next one. In terms of resubmission, if you are found not yet successful, you need to resubmit a portfolio of evidence within that particular domain. Each resubmission is a standalone and is treated as a new submission. So just keep that in mind. Even though it is a new submission, we have to look at each process. We have to look at reflection. We have to look at planning and go through the 4 steps in the cycle to be able to assess that CPD holistically. So just bear in mind, even though you may, the comments may be on one particular section, ensure that there's flow throughout. Ensure that all of them align to what you're describing as you move into implementation and evaluation. On resubmitting, start a new portfolio of evidence entry unless the assessor has recommended that your portfolio, your POE entry can be corrected. Have a look at the comment section. So only you can, the suggestion is you only change or move onto a different competency standard if the assessor has guided you to do that. If you've chosen the wrong one, if it's not something that's really easy, and we'll go through the difficult ones now, whatever comments that the assessor has said to you, take that into consideration. Don't just suddenly change it, rather work on the current submission instead of starting a whole new submission, unless the assessor has directed you to do so. So to maximize your chance to be eligible to write the intern examination, make sure that you submit early and submit regularly on a monthly basis, so you're on top of whatever is required. So look at the guidance documents in your intern manual, which is done very well and very descriptive on the conditions, the application procedures, and the timelines, which Tabang has covered already. Next slide. To prevent the need for further resubmission, make sure that you follow your assessor's comments. You see, we keep reiterating because it is a problem. Resubmitted portfolio of evidence entries are sent to the same assessor. So don't really just resubmit, thinking that it goes to somebody new and hoping that you will pass, because you will be deemed not successful again. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you make the relevant changes to ensure that you are compliant and you are competent, sorry. Assessors can see previous submissions and also comments. So please be aware of that. Whatever you've submitted prior in your previous submission, we are able to identify whether you've made any changes, because we could see the difference between what's submitted now and what has been submitted. Professionalism is core. You know, we are future pharmacists that we're speaking to. Professionalism is part of the code of conduct. We expect you to fulfill that. So plagiarism, as Tabang has iterated in her presentation, plagiarism software has been introduced, and please abide to that. No AI-generated content is allowed. Obviously, your POE entries must reflect your own work. Any irregularities, as Tabang has mentioned, can have legal implications to you, and you don't want to start your profession with already having some black mark against your name at Pharmacy Council. Penalties, you should expect that they will be applied, and you can expect them to be severe if you are found guilty of any irregularities, such as unprofessional behavior, plagiarism, copying, all those aspects. Yeah, thank you. Next slide. Confidentiality. So confidentiality is, if you don't abide to confidentiality, immediately that submission becomes not yet competent. So make sure that you are covering all of the names of your patients. Make sure you're covering their faces, so blocking out their eyes, for example, looking at the trailer labels, looking at your prescriptions. Schedule 6 register is often missed sometimes. Make sure that you are blocking out their names really well, blocking it out in dark black blocks instead of just scribbling over them, because that is ineffective. We still can see the name. Remember, confidentiality only applies to patients and not to doctors, hospitals, or any other facilities, not to staff attendance registers as well, and careful not to blank out all your evidence as signatures. We want to be able to see that there's some evidence that you have actually spoken to somebody. Even in pictures as well, make sure that you're not blocking everybody's faces that way. We're not even seeing any patients. Just ideally block out their faces. So now that you're ready to submit on the stepwise approach of completing your portfolio of evidence entries, remember you choose your domain based on your trigger scenario, choose that competency standard that it aligns to your learning need. But first, here are some tips and comments to assist you with choosing an appropriate competency standard for each domain. And these have been developed over the years. We found through experience from assessors and moderators what's recommended, what is possible, what is challenging based on the area that you work in. So a good choice should present no problems for any intern, meaning that you shouldn't have trouble getting evidence. You shouldn't have trouble trying to explain the scenario and how it aligns to each of the steps and the behavioral statements. Consider very carefully, only choose if you are able to collect valid and sufficient evidence. So make sure your evidence is valid and sufficient to be able to successfully fulfill those behavioral statements. Try to avoid the ones that are extremely difficult to obtain sufficient evidence. And for obvious reasons, if you don't have evidence that aligns to the behavioral statements, you're most likely to be deemed not yet competent. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, but because you have access to these slides after the presentation. Essentially, what we've done in these few slides is to guide you as to which is the most appropriate one, and we thought, based on our experience, would be challenging for you and which we would recommend. So I'm just going to pull out the recommended ones for concerns on time. So if you look at domain 1 says 1.1, which we've just covered, is recommended because it's about public health, which is easy to find, it's accessible. Even if you're doing your 400 hours in a retail pharmacy, you're able to do it. And then 1.6, including screening activity. So here you're looking at blood glucose, high blood pressure activities that you could easily fulfill within this domain. Possible is 1.5. Disaster management plan doesn't mean that it's impossible to do. You can do it, but it may be challenging for you depending on where you work. Next one. Domain 2 recommended is 2.1, so includes the patient in the discussion. 2.2 is ensure that when you're doing, or if you do 2.2, make sure that the sufficient evidence is submitted, because 2.2, if I'm not mistaken, I think it has more than 10 behavioral statements, and you need to fulfill at least 75% of that behavioral statement to be deemed as competent. 2.6 is recommended. The challenging one, just note 2.8, so you wouldn't really align to that. 3.1, the most common one that we do find interns do is 3.4, which is the one which is common. So if you want to and you find the sufficient evidence, that would be the easy one for you to do. 3.5 is also recommended. Extemporaneous compounding, also a common one. So if you participate in an activity and you're lucky enough to do that, we would recommend that you do 3.5. Next slide. Domain 4. Domain 4, the most common one here is 4.6. So 4.6 is the ability to execute a policy and a operating procedure. So here it is just to apply these concepts. The common problem that we find here is what is a policy, and the intern manual describes what a policy is to you in quite detail. So use the intern manual as a guide. And that for us is one of the most recommended ones because it's easy to do. And SOPs and policies exist in any environment that you work in. So it's easy. Next one. Domain 5, 5.1 and 5.2. Remember in domain 5, 5.3 is the one, so you cannot choose any of the other ones. And that's ethical practice within the pharmacy or wherever you may be. Domain 6, 6.2, 6.6 is recommend. Here, this domain focuses on training. So be careful when you're looking at the training components and the behavioral statements that are. So make sure you read the behavioral statements really carefully. Look at the scope of practice, who you're training as evidence, who is your audience. Make sure it aligns to what the requirement is for a particular competency standard. Next slide. So the next step is just to give you some ideas of evidence. I'm also going to skip through this quickly. As I said, you have access to this. So what we've done here is potential evidence that you could submit for the submissions that we have recommended. So 1.1 we've covered in depth already, and you did a fantastic job in identifying the relevant evidence. And then if you look at 1.6, which is the screening tool, blood pressure, glucose, etc., you can find that easily within any pharmacy, be it hospital or retail. So in 2.1, domain 2, you can see 2.1, we talk about nature of the problem, the consultation area, language use, sensitive versus insensitive. So you'll see the lines to the behavioral statements. It may be a little bit confusing here, but just to be able to say to you, these are the types of evidence that we would expect you or guide you. And it's not limited to this in terms of the evidence. You could come up with different things that we may have not thought about, but make sure it aligns to the behavioral statements and you're descriptive when you are explaining it in your planning and your evaluation section. 2.7 is possible, 2.6, the pamphlet and the referral letter. Next slide. Domain 3, so 3.4 is the one that's recommended, and as I've said, it's dispensing, so there's a lot of different details that you can submit when it comes to 3.4, and you can have a look at that and make sure it aligns to your behavioral statement. Next slide. 4.6, policy is the most common one. Make sure you understand the difference between policy and standard operating procedure. So that's the biggest error when it comes to this particular domain, is interns are submitting the good pharmacy practice as a policy, and that's not a policy. So a policy, remember, it's implementation within your facility, and there's many in your facility that you work at. 5.3 is compulsory. So here it's ethical practice, it's legislation. Make sure you cover all of the legislation that's requested within the behavioral statement. So the acts, the code of conduct, ethical rules, keeping abreast is what has been the new legislation that has come out, and showing the assessor and the moderator that you are keeping up to date with the current legislation, and that's easily accessible on the Pharmacy Council website. Indemnity certificate as well is provided in this particular one. So make sure you fulfill 75% of that behavioral statements there. 6. Here again, training, be careful what you submit. The training plan is always a challenge with 6.2. Understand what a training plan is, do some research, find out if your institution doesn't have a training plan, there's an opportunity for you to introduce it to them, show them what it's all about, and you can show us how you've implemented that. So understand what a training plan is, show us what a training plan is, and how you've executed that particular behavioral statement. Next one. Okay, so just talking about policy development. So just to differentiate between a policy and a standard operating procedure, which I've mentioned already. So just some examples there. National drug policy is an example of a policy. Health and safety, security, pest control, all of those are examples of policies. So make sure you are able to provide a good policy and not submitting the good pharmacy practice. Next slide. So through our discussions, Mr. Rasakela was kind enough to share his take on some of the challenges that he thought interns are facing, and he did a presentation, so we thank him for these slides. So he found that some of these challenges came out in discussions with the tutors in his province. And the first one is looking at the core competency development, which is lack of planning capabilities, non-independent thinking, lack of independent learning ability, lack of comprehensive analysis capability, and insufficient preparation. So when he engaged the interns, these are some of the challenges that he came up with that we wanted to highlight for you and that you need to be aware of as you progress through the year, that perhaps these are some things that you are facing. Remember, every challenge, every failure is really a stepping stone success. I know it sounds cliched, but it's the truth. So you need to be aware that maybe this is limiting you in being successful in your CPDs, and reach out to your tutor and ask them for help, assistance in however they can guide you. The skills that potentially is challenging is communication, adaptability, creativity, teamwork, transparency, and time management. So based on his experience, these are the key areas that he found, that skills that perhaps are missing with interns, and areas that he finds that are challenging for interns. So be careful of your time. Make sure that you are able to work within the team, that you are able to adapt. It is difficult to make the transition from being a university student to a working environment. So try to see how you can adapt within that environment to be able to be successful in your submissions. And then attitude, lack of enthusiasm and initiative, no sense of responsibility, lack of passion, generally unhappy, low morale, and mental issues on the rise. So when it comes to attitude, it's such a sensitive thing, it's such a personal thing, and just be aware that if you need assistance, your tutors are there, you have a group of other interns that are potentially experiencing the same as you. So form support groups to help each other, and you have your academics that could assist you in your universities, that your lecturers that you've just left. Most of them are able to assist you with these competency standards and to guide you through the process. Remember, the internship and the CPD process is really there to make you a better pharmacist. We want to be able to develop professionals that provide the best patient outcomes for our patients in the public, in public. So really look at this as an exercise for you to just improve your skills. Remember, you learned all the theory, now it's really time for you to execute. Next slide. So finally, just to sum up and just to remind you what a CPD is all about, it is there to help you to learn, to experience, to develop, succeed, and become a true lifelong learner. Thanks, Adele. So there's a slide, another poll, a final poll for you to just complete from a survey perspective that Tabang mentioned earlier. So please complete it so then we are aware of who attended. This forms as a attendance register, and it's also insightful for us and what we thought of the presentation and how we could improve it. Thanks, Tabang.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vinny. And then I think now is time for question and answers. So as interns are completing the survey, we will continue with the questions and answers session. Natalie, please don't forget to share the link on chats. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang. I have shared the link in the Q&A section. The first question, the supervising pharmacist must submit progress reports while you are doing your 400 hours. Just want to confirm that this is not talking about the tutor, but the one who is sort of responsible for you while you are at the institution for the 400 hours.
Tarang, I can take that. Yes,
Thank
so
you.
this pertains to interns that would be registered in academia, manufacturing, as well as wholesale. If you are, that there would be a requirement for the supervising pharmacist to submit the 400 hours declaration, as well as the sectoral progress report. And that sectoral progress report is then verified by your tutor that you are registered under. Thank you.
Good day. Are we allowed to complete our 400 hours at 2 different pharmacies, or does it have to be at one pharmacy?
Okay, Tabang, I'm going to come back here. You are allowed, however, you need to note that when you do your 400 hours, it needs to be over a period of 5 consecutive days, and it can't be split. and when that is followed as such, then we will be able to recognize it.
Do we find the behavioral statements in the intern manual?
Okay, let me go for it. Yes, like we have indicated during presentations, there's a page in the intern manual that lists all the domains, the CS, and also the BS there. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, if I may ask, how do I add a date stamp on a picture?
Hi, Natalie. I'm not sure if everybody's quiet. I'm not sure how to answer the question, but I know a lot of cameras are able to allow you the option to put a date stamp on it. I'm not sure if my colleagues are more au fait with technology, but from my knowledge, I know that that's how they do it. You're able to put it on your camera.
Hi, Rene. Yes, sorry, I was just, I needed to unmute myself, but I was still sharing my screen. Yes, I've seen interns, the cameras that do add the date, and I've also seen interns that add a label with the date where they and the tutor sign the date. So there are ways to do that.
Thanks, Adele.
Hi, the 9 free submissions, does it include when our tutor sends it back to us and we submit again?
Okay, thank you, Adele. The 9 submissions refers to when the entry is being submitted for assessment by the tutor. So when the entry is still between the tutor and the intern, that is not counted as a submission. But once it has been submitted for assessment, that's when we start counting. Thank you.
You said the reflection should be 1,000 words, or the entire entry should be a maximum of 1,000 words.
Natalie, no, it's not 1,000 words, it's 1,000 characters. So they can just check in the block when they copy some text in there, it's 1,000 characters, not words.
Okay,
And maybe
allowed?
to add on what Adele has said, is for each step, not the 1,000 characters is for each step of the CPD cycle. Thank you.
Thanks, Twan. Are we allowed to request more detailed feedback from assessors if we need clarification?
Thank you, Natalie. I've indicated that there is a procedure for an intern to have a consultation with the assessor. So what is happening is when the intern has submitted an entry for the first time and there are comments, we are expecting the intern to work with the tutor to try and respond to the assessor's comments. And then if the intern fails on the second attempt, that's when they can request the office to arrange a consultation with the assessor. So they must just go and check on the conditions for having a consultation with the assessor, like I indicated in my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Does the Similarity report take into account the guidelines used as evidence?
The Similarity report will focus on the more on the text that has been submitted than the evidence. So the report doesn't really include what has been provided as an evidence. So it's more on the text. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang. Just to let the interns know we were aware of the problem with the survey. You can please try the link again. I have posted it again in the Q&A section. Thanks. Okay, the next question. Can you please show where and how we submit the evidence?
Okay, so I will go back to my presentation. Still having. Okay. Can I share my slides at Natalie?
Yes, Tabang, I'll stop sharing so that you can share.
Okay, thank you. Where's that slide? So are you able to see my slides? I hope the interns can also see.
No,
So
Tabang, please share.
as I share again, okay. And the show. Let me share. Okay. Share. Are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Can you
now
just put it in
available.
presentation mode?
Okay. So the interns will submit the entry for a similarity check at the 4th step of the CPD cycle, that is the evaluation. So once they are done responding to the few questions by selecting the correct options under the drop-down arrow there, then they are expected to provide a description of what they have learned in the whole activity. From there, they will have to save and submit for similarity check. So this is where they are supposed to click, and then it will take them to the EULA, wherein they must agree and, where they must agree and submit. Then once that is done, the entry then will be submitted for, they must click the submit again. Then from there, it will be submitted for similarity check and a report will be generated from there. So that is at the last step of the CPD cycle.
Thanks, Tabang. Does the patient's signature need to be hidden as well for evidence?
Okay, let me take it. I thought my assessor and moderator's colleague will take it. So everything that can be used to identify the patient need to be hidden. So if the signature, the patient's signature is there and it's in such a manner that one can be able to identify the patient, that should be hidden as well. But maybe I think Makado wanted to say something. Let me allow him to add. Thank you.
Yeah, Tabang, I think you did cover. In most cases, they will hide the names, whatever, because in a signature, is normally in such a manner that you can't recognize. But those ones where maybe I write my name Makado, obviously, then it will be identification. So you did respond to that already. Thank you.
Tabang, I just want to add to that. that black block we showed the interns don't cover the whole signature. If you want to cover it, cover a piece of it, because sometimes interns cover such a lot of evidence that you cannot see if there was actually anything there before they covered it. So don't make the block too big, but cover the identifiable information, if that makes sense.
Thanks, everyone. Just a note to the attendees, we will be closing the questions in the next minute. So if you still have questions that haven't been answered, please post them quickly. Right, the next question. May you clarify the point of our tutors verifying our pieces of evidence? Do they need to sign all our pieces of evidence as verification?
I'll take that. No, it's not necessary for your tutor to sign every piece of evidence. They will see it and they will verify online, but it is good if you want. You have to work under direct supervision. For example, their signature will be on the dispensing copy, for example, if you're in a retail pharmacy, there you will identify their signature, but they don't have to sign every page of your CPD. If they want to, they can sign the first page, say they've checked everything, it is yours, but the verification for the tutor is now online. But certain spaces, if you make a compound, somebody has to sign the steps of the compound. So there the signatures have to be identified and they will sign there.
Thank you. In the evidence document, should both the tutor and my signature with the date be on every page, or is it fine to only highlight and annotate the signatures where applicable?
Yes, Natalie, I think this links to the previous question, and yes, only where applicable, and you will identify it there.
Thank you. Can internship registration be backdated? In the case one reported on time at the facility but registered late for internship due to technical and administrative issues from council and the facility.
I can take that, Natalie.
Okay.
So there is a process to review registration. It's reviewing the registration that is existing. And remember, you are required to be registered as an intern in order to have the relevant scope of practice before you commence work at any facility. So we then allow interns who would like to have their registration reviewed by way of application, which can be backdated or not backdated based on the merit submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Must all the pictures that we put as evidence have a date stamp?
Okay, let me get this. In the evidence, what is needed is like the evidence, them to annotate. It's not like in each and every page they need to put a date stamp. Normally, when they load it, it will indicate the date when it was loaded. I think that information helps them, but they don't have to have each and every page stamped.
If you use the date stamp for pictures, should you annotate every stamp or can you only do it once?
Natalie, I don't think I have to stress too much about this. If you're doing a public health campaign, you will do it today, or you're making a mixture and you want to show how you do it. We will be able to see that there's a sequence in the pictures. So you can identify yourself, this is me compounding, this is the area, this is what I'm doing. So if you start the sequence with a dated verified photograph, the assessor will be able to follow all the photographs, so you don't have to, in every photo, this is me, because it will be a sequence for the day and you'll probably be dressed the same and everything, you'll be in the same area. So the interns can just make sure that the assessor know this is me, and in all the photos I can see this is you and it was taken today and you are compounding a mixture and you're holding the final product, for example.
All right. Do we hide the name and signature of the doctor in our evidence?
No, the doctor is in the public, his information is in the public domain. So doctor information is not protected with patient. It's only patient confidentiality, not healthcare professionals.
Sometimes the AI similarity checks often say some texts are AI generated when they are not. Will that be taken into consideration? I'm saying this because sometimes there is no other way to structure a sentence and it may be picked up as AI generated.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. So in that case, then the intern needs to provide more information on what happened, and it will be up to the assessors and moderators whether they take it or not.
Thanks. The last question, please elaborate more on domain 4, competency standard 4.6. Are we expected to be involved in the development of the policy or SOP, or just show that we can follow an existing one?
Natalie, Makado, I see you are there. You can maybe add to that. If the intern goes to the intern manual, have a look at 4.6. They will see the competency standard is applying SOPs and policies, where A is the SOP policy and B is the SOP. And if they go to 4.4, the development of a SOP and the training for SOPs, they will find in competency standard 4.4. And that is why we suggest 4.6, that's only showing application of these documents.
Yeah, I think you have covered, because normally with 4.6, yes, they don't need to develop their responsibility, just to show how they can apply both the policy and the SOP. And in most cases, I mean, I think they struggle in showcasing how the policy was applied. But otherwise, there's no development at that CS. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Tabang, that was the last question.
Okay, thank you, Nat. And this brings us to the end of our workshop. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the interns who managed to join us this evening, and we want to wish them all the best. We're still going to have other workshops, I think this February on the 20th and also on the 31st of March. So in case you wish to be part of the workshops again, please feel free to do so. And again, I just want to wish you all the best. Please try to submit the first entry as soon as possible, and make sure that you take into consideration all the advices that were provided today, just to make sure that you are on the right track. So we're wishing you all the best. And I just want also to thank my colleagues from the office and the assessors and moderators who joined us this evening. Thank you so much for making this workshop possible. And we really appreciate all the effort you have put into making it into making the workshop the way it is. It shows that everybody has done his or her part. And with those few words, I want to say goodbye and have a good evening. Thank you.